I'm officially obsessed, and you will be too. If you haven't tried Lem by Hello Nancy yet, what are you doing? Over 1 million women are using it, and the reviews are wild. One girl literally said, "Join the incredibly satisfied brigade." I didn't believe it until I tried it myself. The hype is 100% real. Don't let the cute design fool you. Go to hellonancy.com and see what the hype is about.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
What does it really look like to raise independent, capable kids in today's world? Hi, I'm Jenny.
And I'm Christine.
And welcome to Big Little Lessons.
Together, we have over 50 years of experience in elementary education. And we truly believe that the lessons we teach and the lessons we learn in kindergarten stay with us for a lifetime.
Today's episode is really special, a special one for us, because it brings together two perspectives we don't always get to explore side by side. The relationship between parent and child, and the long arc of a child's educational journey.
Today, we're joined by Carolyn and her daughter Margaret, two educators connected not only by family, but a shared commitment to helping children grow into capable, confident learners.
We've known Carolyn from afar through our K-12 school community, where she works in the high school division. And we've had the unique privilege of knowing Margaret in 2 seasons of her life. First as a student years ago, and now as a colleague in the primary grades.
And we have to say, watching Margaret in the classroom has been incredibly meaningful for us. After all, I've personally known you since you were 3 years old, which is mind-blowing.
Yep.
She teaches with clarity and attention. She creates strong, loving boundaries, and she truly understands what children are capable of.
And Margaret doesn't rush in to do things for her students. She expects them to rise, and they do. And that's really at the heart of today's conversation.
Because whether you're a parent, an educator, or simply someone who cares about helping children grow into independent, resilient adults, this episode invites us to consider:
how do we support children without overstepping?
And how do we step in thoughtfully so they can eventually step forward on their own?
And we'll also explore what it's been like for Carolyn to be both a parent and an educator within the same school community.
What it meant for Margaret to grow up in that environment,
and what it's like now to come full circle as colleagues. All right, so welcome, Carolyn and Margaret.
Thank you.
We're so happy to have you here. We always like to start at the very beginning. So, Carolyn, we'd like to ask you, what is one of your earliest school memories?
Well, I remember being in preschool, and the preschool that I went to is right down the street from my dad's university. And so he would come pick me up at school every day. I think I was 3 or 4. And so I just remember him being really involved in my education. I mean, as both my parents were, but from a really early age.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to a Montessori school, as did my siblings. So I also remember lots of independent time where you could choose what you wanted to do. That was really fun to have that independence even in a small way.
Yeah. Can you describe for our listeners a little bit like the Montessori? Is it like a structured or?
So, I mean, as you probably know, right, Maria Montessori was an educator in the late 19th century through the early 20th century. So lots of focus on independence, choice of activity, having students direct their own learning. So I don't really remember, although I'm sure it happened, that there were times at which the whole classroom was addressed together. But more often than not, there were just a series of activities that were discrete, and you got to choose what you wanted to do for that particular time period. And if you didn't know how to do it, then you were taught how to do it, right? Whether it was peeling carrots or pouring water or working on number lines or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
But it always seemed really fun.
That's so cool because we're all pretty much the same age. I mean, to go to a Montessori school, your parents were ahead of their time, to some extent.
Yeah, their closest, I mean, they were really dedicated to education. Like we all went to public school through graduate school, all of my brothers and I, and they were very committed to public education. And so we would move school districts based on the educational program or that kind of thing. My mom was an elementary school psychologist, and worked in the city just adjacent to ours. And so, and then our best family friends ran a Montessori school and were Montessori teacher trainers. So I don't know if that's how they made the connection. We grew up with that family, and their kids, of course, went to Montessori as well. So
That's nice.
And then did your kids go to Montessori?
my older two did, and then Margaret went to a different preschool only because of some childcare situation at that point, where she went to school with a preschool that a family that we knew went to, and so she sort of tagged along with them for carpooling.
Oh, yeah.
It was great.
How about you, Margaret? What's one of your earliest school memories?
I'd say probably in kindergarten, and they're mostly like sensory things. We used to do that whole like ocean unit, remember? And I think we went to an aquarium, and I just remember touching like the starfish, and then it was all sensory stuff. And then during our rainforest curriculum, I remember we made rain sticks. I just remember that sound so clearly, and I just remember being so excited to like make my own, and then the sound was like so soothing. So it was mostly, I think, my earliest stuff, just like touch and
I love that, because when we're in the classroom together and, I'll make something, you'll notice something, you'll say, this is really important because students will remember this. Because they can see it and they can touch it and they can feel it.
Those are the moments I remember like most clearly, or the things that are associated with some like intense scent or smell or whatever.
It's like touching all the senses. It's not workbook page number 48.
Yeah. That's what I remember. Is all the play in kindergarten. And that's why I'm so fond of that grade.
Oh, and you're so wonderful in kindergarten. So let's talk a little bit about your upbringing of roots, because I think it really helps listeners to understand how you were raised and how you've brought that forth in your own families. So, Carolyn, I'd like to start with you. You grew up in a home where education is clearly valued. Your mother was an elementary school psychologist. Your dad was a professor. What do you remember most about how you were raised?
There was a lot, and it was interesting because it's not as if these were things that were ever said, right? But there was a lot of attention paid to us being independent, to us having our own sense of privacy, our own sort of independent lives. There was lots of training, lots of work. So there was a focus on work, right? Them in their professional lives, us in our own school lives, and then together as a family running the household, sort of a thing. And so it was important that everybody was contributing, that there was also a real focus on integrity again. And it wasn't as if somebody said, you have to always tell the truth. It was this is kind of what they modeled and you were expected to follow. So it was really, I think, just following their expectations, right? In terms of how we were to conduct ourselves. That you had a commitment to other people, an obligation to other people, that life didn't revolve around you. You were part of a larger unit, right? Now your family, and then sort of beyond that. And so that's...
And my granddad, your dad, like the service part was important. Like he did AIDS research. He did a lot of his work was important,
Yeah, and I think they both, as I realized later, probably when I became a teacher, that they had chosen lives of service, but never talked about it. And it wasn't, they didn't talk about it as a value, but I realized, this is what both of them chose. And so it was important. I think later realized that you were doing something that contributed, right, in some way.
How did they feel when you decided to go into education?
I don't remember. I was ambivalent about it because I never had wanted to become a teacher because they were both, that was their, And so when I went to graduate school, I spent a year in an MBA program because I was going to corporate ladder. That sounded so fun, flying all over in a little briefcase. And then I didn't like it very much.
So you tried it out for a little bit?
I tried it out for a little bit, and I went and I also switched to English, which is what my undergraduate degree is in, just because I liked doing school.
Yeah.
And then just came across, right, Campbell Hall by chance and thought, maybe I'll do that. And then all the cliches, it all fell into place with that, this is really, like, everything that people say about teaching is true. Even though my parents didn't say I'm doing this because it's important work and I'm giving back to the community. Nobody ever said that. So that's how I landed at Campbell Hall. They didn't say one thing or another, I don't think. It wasn't, my parents never would have been, if there wouldn't be any disappointment in what you had chosen to do. It was just, okay, that's interesting and tell me more about it. And I think probably there were some questions about what does it mean to be in Episcopal school. My parents are atheists, raised in that kind of a household. And also with their commitment to public education. What does that mean? That I didn't know anybody who went to independent schools in Orange County, so it wasn't something that I knew. And I did have some, I don't know, maybe you'll ask this later, but some question about, this was before I had any kids, just right after I had been married. So do I really want to send my kids to a school where there's more perhaps entitlement? Then how do you deal with that? But made the decision to do that, which I'm glad I did.
Yeah. It's so interesting to see how people kind of land and the jobs that they're in.
Do you have any specific values or phrases from your parents that have stayed with you?
Well, I think no particular phrases. I mean, my mom would have these little axioms, right?
Don't we all?
But I think I'm lucky in that my husband and I just raised our kids the way that I was raised, more or less, because I found that so valuable. And I think by and large, maybe that's not the case where people say, I want to do this differently or that differently. But it all seems so reasonable and intentional, right, that I find myself relying on their model. Even my mom now, I'll call her, so what do you think about this? Or what would you do in this case? That kind of thing.
Now, you bring a really good point, because in all the conversations that we're having with people, I think a lot of times parents really think about the way that they were parented and make a conscious decision not to do better than their parents and don't always have such a foundation to draw from to apply to their own parenting oftentimes.
Yeah, I think it's refreshing because most people want to deconstruct their whole childhood and start all over. So kudos to your parents, and your 3 children are all so phenomenal. And so that's another reason why I wanted to have you on, is to share all these great things, because I'm sure you would say all 3 of your kids are very different from one another. Or are they not?
They all have their own,
I would say we're different.
yeah, your personality is your own, right? But there's a shared
Definitely.
value system that you have and a shared kind of approach and things like that. So,
100%.
Yesterday we were chatting, and you both had mentioned that kind of at the core, the idea that once a child can do for themselves, you want them to do that. So where did you get that from?
That's my mom would say that. Yeah, that's a direct Maria Montessori thing. Never do for a child what he can do for himself. Certainly you need to be shown how to do something, but then after that, have the patience to allow them to do it themselves rather than swooping in and doing it, because that's how kids develop. It's competence, right? Is knowing how to do things. And I think when kids get older, having them make their own decisions, right? And being sure that or expecting that they'll do that. That you're not going to be stepping in to do that for them. And I think it comes from acknowledging, which my parents always did, that you're your own individual person. You're not some extension of your parent or some reflection of your parent, right? You're your own person who needs to develop into being an adult.
I was just thinking of that word because we've talked a lot about intentional parenting and what it means. We haven't talked so much about this, which I think is so interesting. We've talked a lot about creating boundaries and all the important things, but being your own person sounds like that was a big part of your philosophy. Do you want to talk a little bit about your parenting philosophy?
I think it would be understanding, I guess, philosophy, or I guess I think of it as understanding properly what your role is, right? That you're playing the long game, right? You realize that everything you're doing now is training to become this functioning adult, right? And so it's not like people at a certain age, when they suddenly become 18 or adult, that they know how to do that, right? That everything you're doing as a parent up until that point is not that people also don't have their own personalities and that kind of thing, but is contributing to that, right? Is helping them build skill in terms of how to become independent, responsible, competent, And so I guess it would just be philosophy, like, lots of training.
Right. Lots of time.
Lots of being sort of reasonable, being clear about expectations, being consistent. That's really important, which is, I think, the most tiring part of parenting.
Yep.
Because you just have to be on it all the time.
Yep.
But again, reasonable boundaries, not that you're controlling things that don't matter.
Yes.
Right. But that things that do matter, you're being consistent about those.
Absolutely. So what did that look like in your home? Say you're getting ready for school. You're on this time crunch.
I think part of it is like providing a consistent environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Consistent sort of routines. I guess part of it is is the modeling, of that I would provide, right? Or Tim would provide, that you're acting as that primary example of sort of being calm and being, again, the response to some particular expectation. And so maybe that doesn't go as planned. The consequence is clear and you respond sort of each time.
But it's measured.
But it's measured, right? There's no sort of emotional outburst, or it's all just very rational.
Right.
If I think of my own parents, there was no, and maybe too little, I don't know. You'd have to ask Margaret. Too little emotion, right? But it's all just very rational, like, here's how it's going to go. And
Matter of fact,
right. Nothing is a surprise. It's not suddenly, how are my parents going to react to this? You sort of know what the reaction is going to be. And then consistency, again, just, I think, following through pretty much every single time.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if you think, do you mean like when it's crazy around the house, like in the morning, then you also develop systems that work for everybody to smooth things out. Because I had 3 kids they all went to school with me, every day. And you have a uniform at school, you have systems, put lots of systems into place. So I finally realized this, in the laundry room, this like getting the laundry out and then having to everybody take it to their room. Forget that. We're just putting the uniforms. Everybody's going to get a drawer in the laundry room. And their stuff just went straight into their drawers.
Hers, the youngest. So Catherine put this on the top, Anders in the middle, mine at the bottom. And so if something didn't fit you anymore, you just put it in the next room.
And then people end up getting dressed in the laundry room, kind of.
Yeah.
But that seemed like things like that. I guess you're right. Creating some sort of systems to make things as uncomplicated as possible, to be efficient and be functional that way.
For example, when we were old enough to go to school in the front seat, then there'd be some bickering, in the morning about who was going to be sitting in the front seat, blah, blah, blah. And so I don't know if you made it or we made it. I think you probably told us that we needed to figure something out. And so we had a chart for who sat in the front seat each day. And it was taped into the car in the back seat. And so just stuff like that takes away all those small little...
Right, just sort of frenzy.
Yeah. Also, in the morning, like our dad made our sandwiches every morning. Like everyone had a job.
Everyone had
a job.
Yeah.
Where you made your lunch, so he brought the sandwich and you were self-sufficient in that sense.
What if Margaret, when she was really little, didn't want to put her shoes on or her socks on? Like, what happened?
I probably wouldn't have cared about that. Yeah, that's again another.
Yeah.
Or giving people choices. Okay, you want to wear your pajamas to preschool?
Right.
I wouldn't have. That wouldn't have. But unless you were like entirely inappropriate, we were. I'm going to go without a shirt on today. I'm like, well, no, you need to wear a shirt. So do you want to wear this one or that one?
Right.
Yeah.
And that goes under the umbrella of also what we've talked about of picking your battles, like which things are really important and which things are not.
Yeah, thinking about the balance between helping, guiding, and also rescuing.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've seen parents do this time and time again. If a child doesn't bring their library book, the parent will run home and collect their library book for them. What would you do in those situations?
I would not get the library book.
Yeah.
Right. I think at some point, I thought, okay, if the kid forgot their lunch, okay, I'm going to find food for them for the day because I was there on campus with them. Stuff like that I feel like rarely happened, but it could be, I didn't bring my homework. Okay, well, how do you think you're going to handle that? I guess you'll bring it tomorrow,
Right.
But
I
might
like
wanna
that
ask
you put
your
it back
teacher.
on them. It was
Right.
like, I'm so sorry.
It's like each one is a teachable moment.
Yes.
Like,
And also that it's not that big a deal. Or, you know what I mean? Like, it's a big deal, like, you weren't like electing to be irresponsible, but you need to have your homework. But so what you'll do is you'll need to, I would suggest you talk to your teacher and ask them what they want you to do. Do you need to do it over at lunch because it's really important for today? Or could you bring it tomorrow? Or, that kind of thing.
Would you describe that you stayed pretty even during those times?
I was, or always am even. Yeah. I
Right.
don't remember ever.
You should bottle that.
I don't think I've
Be an air
ever
one.
heard my husband raise his voice.
Yeah, there was no.
Yeah.
If you did
Just not-
something, made a mistake or something, they never yelled in the house. There's no yelling. It's like, even if you might need to go to your room and maybe come out when you're ready to come out, but there's there's no yelling. I mean, I had like a tantrum on Christmas one year because
You were 3.
I was 3. I remember that. We have it on video because I got this. I opened this box, I opened the present and it was a box. It was like a decorative box, probably from Bless or something. But I opened it up and there was nothing in it.
Oh.
And I started crying
But the gift was the box.
because the gift was the box. But I didn't realize that. And so I was crying, there's nothing in the box. And then you're on video going, well, why don't you go to your room and, when you're
Done crying?
you can come back
back
out.
in.
And so I do, and minutes pass, and I come back out, and you see me in the hallway. Well, I'm trying to kind of pull myself together. Like, I guess I could put my fainting guys in the box, which were those little soaps you put in the bathtub, and they'd like, from Sephora. I guess I could put my fainting guys in the box, and then you say something.
Somebody said like that.
You said,
Sounds like a great idea.
Good idea.
Yeah.
And then that was it. Where some parents might be, oh, are you ready to come out now? Oh, okay, you done crying? Or... And
You're not drawing any attention to it yourself.
Yeah,
Right.
like you knew that you weren't going to be met with any kind of ridicule or you just kind of worked through your emotions and that was it.
You see parents stepping in, but it doesn't seem like you did that, Carolyn. Was there ever a time that you did do that? Your kid was really struggling with something, but I think it's just the way it looks, like the way that you're describing the way it was set up in your household. It might look different than it does in someone else's house because of the way you handled it.
I think, right, when somebody struggled, I think the approach was, let me know, is there some way I can help you? Or, okay, so what are some options in this situation? And versus, oh my gosh, that's so horrible, you're struggling. Oh, I'm so, and then the parent gets dragged into the emotion and, right, because there's no help that you're getting in trying to resolve this or determine what your options are in moving forward. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was always the approach, like whatever the struggle was. Right.
And in terms of struggles, it was kind of like driven by us in terms of if you need help, like tell me what you need help with and then we'll figure it out,
Be direct, concrete. What do you need?
Not necessarily that, but I'm just thinking of like a problem you're running. Like I forgot to turn in one of my college apps and now it won't turn in and I don't know what I'm going to do and I'm freaking out. But it's not as if you're coming, what's wrong? Like you go to the parent and say.
So on your end, you knew that you could come to your parents. It wasn't your parents going to you. I think that's what we see.
Yeah, it's mostly like, I'd say driven by us. Like, tell me what you need help with,
unless you like knew somebody was struggling
Right,
with something,
course.
then you might, hey,
Right,
do you need help with that?
Mhm.
Or, I think that would, and then I would guess then you guys felt like you knew you could come to us because it would be met with, okay, let's try to
This is
figure
what
out
I'm
what to
gonna
do.
I love what you said, though, about not having those the emotional attachment, because I know I've been in therapy. I was in therapy with my kid, and the therapist was like, it's so unhealthy to feel someone else's feelings. And it just the way that it affects you. And, I'm listening to you. I'm like, that's incredible. I'm working so hard to be that way. The way that I grew up was different than the way you grew up. My dad could get hysterical, and I guess it's what's modeled for you.
Because I always, like, even as a, like long into my adulthood, and you guys would do the same. You do the same with my mom now and my dad when he was still alive. Each of my kids would go to them for advice as well.
Right.
Like, then they had their own relationship with them than I did. Like, I need to talk to granddad about whatever it might be.
But that's what makes their counsel so valuable, is that it was always, so you don't always want problem solving, right? Sometimes from emotion, you just want a hug, right? You don't want the problem solving. But when you need the advice and that sort of like, let's talk it through, it's so helpful not to always have the emotional piece involved.
Yeah.
You know, and like, I see you clearly as a human. Yep. Okay. Well, I mean, my granddad, I called him a million times in college and high school for advice on mainly decisions, because I'm not a very good decision maker. And that is always super helpful.
Yeah. He sounds like a great guy.
As well as ACT prep.
As ACT prep as well, which was why are you getting these answers wrong? A different kind of problem solving. But,
Well, that's because as a teacher, he wanted to know so he could help you with development.
So often I think parents struggle to see their kids struggle. Why do you think that's so hard for us as parents to let our kids struggle? When we know it's for their own benefit.
Well, it's not like when I saw them struggling, it's like, oh, this is really good for you.
yeah,
I'm so glad this is happening.
Great. Thank you for saying.
Yeah.
But not getting swept up in it.
Yeah.
Right?
Not taking it on. Not taking it on.
At least for me, I know that I couldn't be useful. If you're bogged down in the emotion of it, it's hard to be helpful, in the other way that you need to be helpful. But it's helpful to know, like, okay, this is how this should be approached. Like, let me lay out, the world's not going to end. Okay, it's probably going to be fine. What's the worst thing that could happen? Right. This thing over here, that's not so bad. And now let me, in a clear-headed way, which is at least what I need, think through what my options are in this situation. And I can't do that with any raised amount of emotion.
Right.
That's hard for me to do.
And what's different though with the struggles is like, we struggled since we were, it sounds like so, intense, but there were little struggles all the way when we were little, right? So it's not like you're 16 and you're just confronting this first struggle and you're like, how are they going to handle this? That's
had lots
part
of
of
practice.
Preparing people for adulthood is that you have some confidence that they're going to be able to figure it out.
Right, because you've helped them through all these other smaller things.
Because you've been practicing.
But
So
like smaller kids, smaller problems, smaller struggles.
Yeah.
So when you're 16.
So that when you're practicing, so that all throughout those things that you can handle it. And so that when you're 18 or whatever, or 30, you have some sense of, I'll be able to figure this out. Yeah. That confidence.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen that around the word no. Parents really struggling with that word no. Maybe they're worried that it might harm their relationship with their child, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
I think it's a couple of things. Like, to me, that's two related but different questions.
Yeah.
Like, I think
Your
when
relationship.
people don't follow through with saying no, it's because they're tired.
Yeah.
Or like that's the part of like the relentless discipline, the discipline it requires
Like giving in.
to be following through all the time.
Yeah.
So there you're focused on your own for yourself, I think. Short term, okay, I'll give in now because it's going to be so much easier for me. Not even a conscious thing, but you're losing sight of what the long-term goal is.
Which then as the kids learned that if you say no, that you don't really mean it.
So,
Right. And you
then
could
it
wear
becomes-
your parents, you could wear them down.
Oh, and kids can wear
And that
parents
it's worth spending that time to see if you can work it out. That's almost like the problem.
but I think the more consistent you are early on, the easier it is as they get older, when the perhaps risks are greater or what.
And that's when the investment pays off.
But sometimes I think either, I guess, with the not saying no, it's because you're losing your own sort of focus, right, of what you need to be doing. And maybe you're giving in to letting them have what they want at that moment because you're also like invested in like their own happiness in that moment versus something more long term.
And do you think it has anything to do with like some parents want to be their kid's friend?
Yeah.
And,
Great point.
And they're not going to like me if I do that. We run into that all the time with teaching. You know what I mean? And they're not going to like me if I tell them they can't go outside. Right? Well, it's not, I don't know. It's like it's not a friendship. You know what I mean? It's,
but then I think it's also less clear for kids when, like, it comes back to being consistent, right? If you're upholding your expectations all the time, then it's clear to kids what the boundaries are, and that helps them feel more secure. Because if you're coming to a parent, you don't know what their reaction is going to be this time, or the reaction consistency between parents, one parent versus the other, then that's hard for kids, right? Versus it being clear, right? I think this was probably going to happen when I do X, and it's met with, that didn't go so well, versus not knowing how your parent's going to react in any particular moment, whether they're going to give you the thing they want, you're not, know.
So if I don't get the answer I want from this parent, I'll go to the other parent.
Oh, and they're so good at that.
And they do that with teachers too.
Oh, yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yes, they know.
But they do that with teachers, with parents, because the parents don't have a unified front. So like kids only do what works.
Right.
So when it doesn't work, they stop doing it. Right. Yeah. And that's the payoff, like you said, of that's not an issue for very long, right? Because they know that strategy doesn't work. Yeah. So.
Wow. So Margaret, let's shift to you for a minute. What did the parenting style in your house feel like to you? I mean, it's all you know, obviously, but I feel like it really contributed to some of your amazing attributes. And talk about what it was like growing up.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely safe. But I think definitely as a kid, like a younger kid, it's fun because you get all these responsibilities, and we talked about giving people tasks, and there's a lot of work, and it sounds like a Dickens novel or something, but
it's hard enough.
Yeah. But the reality too is then there's training, but then you also have this freedom to do what you want to be doing, right? And that it's not their job to be entertaining you, which also means that you get to do what you want to do, right? And so I'd say definitely safe and just very predictable, but also definitely as a younger child, fun. It's more when you get to high school, it's just normal. But I'd say it's all I know, but it felt very purposeful looking back.
Yeah, and I think when you said you have to figure out what to do, like, students and children these days have their whole days and afternoons and nights scheduled for them. So they don't even have the ability to make those choices.
Right.
Yeah. In so many cases.
Yeah. And we grew up on a block with a lot of, we hung out with our block a lot of friends. Caroline was my best friend when we grew up. And so every day when we went after school, I'd call her, see what she's doing. We'd go to one of our houses, and then that's the afternoon.
Yeah.
But we were always, what should we do? And you'd sit on the phone, well, what do you think we should do?
Right.
I don't know. But then we're selling nasturtiums in our front yard, and, we dig holes.
Yeah.
But no one was looking at us. No one was like, oh my God, that's so cute. Yeah. It was all our thing, and so we were freely allowed to, go down the street or be in her front yard, be in her backyard or wherever, but no one's curating your experience.
Right.
It's all self-driven. And so it's just more, you don't think of this word as a kid, but empowering than having someone kind of be doing something with you all the time. And then also
or with you all the time.
With you all the time.
Yeah.
It was just us. Yeah, someone. I mean, occasionally we go on a hike or something, or you'd take us down the river or something like that, but it wasn't. There's a lot of just hanging out solo.
I wanted to talk to you about you had a system for managing allowance and finances. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so starting from the age of 3, we all got an allowance, and it was $1 per week per your age. So if you were 3, we started getting $3 a week. And then 20% of that went in savings. And so it's usually every week, or sometimes when we were older, 1 to 2 weeks, you get an envelope and then calculating how much each week was, and then times 0.2 for your allowance. And then we all had little cans in my parents' bedroom that you put the coins and allowance, or the savings into. And then I don't know how often we'd go to the bank, and then you had to fill out your deposit slip, talk to the bank teller, all those sorts of things. So it was really like you're learning responsibility, because everything that you buy, you're paying for. So I had a lot of friends growing up that, oh, why don't you just have your parents buy one for you? I said, that's not how it works. So if I buy, like my first savings thing was a Game Boy. If I buy a Game Boy, I'm taking really good care of it, because it took me a long time to save up for it, right? So also having a sense of the value of things. Do you know what I mean? And also like what's worth spending money on and what's not worth spending money on, like quality, right? Oh, is it going to be worth buying this? Just weighing all these decisions.
You're weighing instead of your parents.
Yeah, is it going to be, and they'd help, like you would say, oh, remember you said you wanted to save up for XYZ, so obviously it's your choice if you want to buy this toy car right now, but remember you have that savings goal.
But if you decided to go to 7-Eleven and blow it all on like bubble gum, nobody would say anything.
Yeah, right. So it's also like delayed gratification. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I could spend this now, but if I don't, then I could have this later. And I also always think, like, just math. There's all this just math involved that, well, kids don't get now. Like,
No.
I mean, just mostly because we don't use money and everything, and don't wave your money around in the store.
Yep.
You should be taking things out discreetly and
All
stuff
great
like
lessons,
that.
all
Just
great.
lessons in like one thing.
Well, then you've got to choose what you're going to do with your money.
Money.
Yeah.
And then as an adult now, what does that look like for you? I mean, do you feel like that training, how did that training translate?
100%. Yeah. I mean, because now it turns into stuff like budgeting, and this is something that like my granddad and my uncles are all kind of interested in, like the investing.
Investment.
Yep.
But yeah, managing money now, it's being able to save. I learned to save when I was 5. I had my own personal little bank. I'd be loaning money out to my brothers and sisters. They'd have to sign a slip. So it was always a fun thing for me to be able to engage in as like adult.
You were taught, and then we were talking about money.
Yeah.
So it wasn't secret.
It wasn't some secret.
Right.
And
there's like, well, that's not in the budget. We can't, we're not,
right.
whatever it might be. Like if there was
And
something
it also
like going on
turns
vacation
into-
or whatever.
It also turns into sort of like entrepreneurial and venture. So when
laundry.
When I was saving up for my Game Boy in 2nd grade, I was making $7 or $8 a week. And the Game Boy was probably like $100-something. There was no other way for me to make money. So I was thinking, I think I asked you, like, hey, is there any way I can make some extra money around the house? My mom said, yeah, actually, you could fold some laundry. And I said,
Aside from your regular chores.
aside from my regular chores.
Okay.
This wasn't one of the regular chores. And so I'd fold a thing of laundry, and each basket of laundry, she paid me $0.25. And so,
Carolyn, you're
but then, as a kid, okay, if I do 4 loads, that's going to be $1, like stuff like that. But then what I did is I'd printed out a color picture of the Game Boy, which was special because we didn't usually print in color. But you let me print out a color picture, and I put it on the chair in front of me while I was folding laundry.
Motivating.
And so it's motivating. But so it turns to those sorts of things, or like once I was a little bit older, I was saving for something else, then I would make dinner, and I think you'd pay me like $10 to make dinner. But it had to have like a vegetable and be like fully nutritious. Or okay, if I cut the jasmine, I'll pay you $5. Or stuff, stuff like that.
You're motivating.
It turns into like, okay, how can I make an extra? Or I had a job the summer after 7th grade.
I think that's great. Well, speaking of chores, Carolyn, can you tell everybody about your dad's index card system for cleaning the house? So I think that's so genius.
I don't remember how old we were. We must have been like 8. I was maybe 8. My brother's 9. And I have a brother who's 5 years younger than I am. So, I mean, I'll just preface this by saying my dad is really into cleaning.
And very particular.
And very particular about everything.
Everything.
So there was no housekeeper.
No, never. And so never in his entire life, I think. So there was a little carrier.
Caddy.
Yeah, like a caddy. And it had all the cleaning supplies that you needed. And then also typewritten, a 4x6, maybe it's 5x7, around 4x6 index card on all the steps. That there was one for the bathroom, there was one for the kitchen, because those were some of our chores. And it required, for example, like the bathroom, I just remember this day, like you had to pull everything out of the bathroom and had to go in the hallway. So you started with a clean slate, everything off the counters. And it was really specific, like you're going to use 409 here, and then you're going to use this scrubbing thing over here. And then he would come through and inspect when we were done.
Wow.
And not like a draconian way or anything. It was just like, no, not like that. But,
I'm seeing some water spots.
I'm seeing some water spots on the porcelain here. So what that means is that there's still dirt there. So when you rinse, it has to sheet completely. This is kind of upbringing. There were no mops. You were on because it was just super effective. You're on your hands and knees. Like instruction on how you hold a sponge.
See, that's so important.
It's helpful.
Because it also teaches people how to take care of your things.
Yeah.
Right. And
I mean, the kitchen, you're disassembling remember those electric can openers? You're disassembling that whole thing. You're taking all the knobs off the oven. It was a full training.
I'm curious, how did he learn all these things? Because there wasn't YouTube videos to learn all these.
He's which Margaret has inherited, a master researcher. Yeah. So he owned an apartment building too. So he's highly interested in, which he maintained. He did all of our home maintenance, all of, that kind of thing.
like wires being labeled.
Yeah. He was an engineer before, and then he had a degree later in industrial psychology. So there's very little that he didn't know how to do. And later, my husband, Tim, who's a contractor, did a lot of work on their house, my dad and my stepmom's. And my dad, super
I want an extra 1/8 inch on this
over
down.
here. I want the wiring behind the drywall to be as perfect as it would be if you were seeing it otherwise. So very
It also sounds like
organized.
this is the right way. There's a right way to do this. And there's a wrong way. And I think Christine can.
You would have a label maker when we were learning how to drive, and we had a Volkswagen Rabbit, which was a clutch of diesel. There would be like a little label maker that said, "Don't turn the choke off," or it was just very specific,
organized.
till.
And he's, I
always.
think, part of like where you get like the systems from. Like he
That's
had
true.
a lot of like systems for doing things. And so
Yeah.
when we were talking about that earlier.
I love that you have systems. I think that just clarifies it so much. It's like-
And it's not as if it's like, these are our systems in the house.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, this is how we're going to do this now.
But systems set you up for success,
Yeah.
throughout your life.
Yes.
We all need systems. And also the idea that all jobs are equally valuable in your
Right.
home. Like getting on your hands and knees
Yes.
was a valuable, important job. And it
An
wasn't
important skill to learn.
Yeah.
And that people who do that work are valuable. And that
Because you were going to be, this is how you were going to be taking care of, you need to know how to run your life, right? And this is part of that. Like we all learned how to cook. We had to cook when we were small because my parents both worked. So my brother and my older brother, I don't remember what time my parents got home. I don't know, 5. We were home from school probably at 4. We each had paper routes. So you're doing your paper route, then you're coming home and cooking.
And again, it's not like those things.
Just to learn how to do it. Like, so.
No, like we're going to teach you this really important skill.
Right.
I'm officially obsessed, and you will be too. If you haven't tried Lem by Hello Nancy yet, what are you doing? Over 1 million women are using it, and the reviews are wild. One girl literally said, "Join the incredibly satisfied brigade." I didn't believe it until I tried it myself. The hype is 100% real. Don't let the cute design fool you. Go to hellonancy.com and see what the hype is about.
But then, like, how hard it is to do that. And so when you see someone doing it, right, it's like, oh, it's a lot. But like for even stuff like, we'd clean the windows. And so it always, hey, get your hands off the glass at any store or whatever, because also someone has to go and clean all that.
Because you've done it.
Yeah, right.
So how does that shape your approach to work today, Margaret? Having these systems, and you too, Caroline, how does that approach you?
I mean, I definitely have. I think systems are very important. I think it's always harder. And so you have to choose the ones that you know you can do. Like kind of like that rule. Don't make a rule, I say in quotes, unless you know that you can enforce it.
Uh-huh.
Right. So So I'd say that definitely impacts my work, but also the idea of just make yourself useful. Like, you would say that, Dad would say that sometimes. I'd help my dad on the job site sometimes between years at college, and he'd always just say, if you see something that needs to be done, do it. Don't wait for me to tell you, but just, you always should. Make yourself useful, right? So at any job, if you're idle, find something to do.
Yeah. That's great advice.
That's like the one line. Make yourself useful. Hey, come on. Like, or you're cooking dinner. Make yourself useful. Let's go. And no, come peel this carrot or whatever.
Yeah. And that can sort of use your own judgment.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, use your best judgment.
Yeah. How do I do? Use your judgment. And then
trusting that there is judgment. Like a lot of parents don't have faith that their child will have the judgment to do it, even at an older age. So
but I do that even when we're teaching kindergartners. That'll ask you a question and they want your kind of affirmation. And I like to turn it back. Well, what do you think? Yeah. What do you think? What do you think? I think you can answer that question yourself.
Right.
I do say
oftentimes.
That's a great one. Right back on them.
Right. Just like
kind of a version of use your eyes and your brain.
It's a version of that. Trust yourself.
Yes.
You don't need my
right. I have trust
approval.
that you can figure this out.
You can figure that out.
We were talking earlier a little bit about boredom and curiosity. Your grandmother had a great saying. You're wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Your grandmother.
What my grandmother used to say to you, as you say,
it was calculus specifically.
Yeah.
It's so boring.
So boring.
Well,
she's saying in her wood.
Well, it's your job to make it interesting. Yes. And then that sort of deflates.
And so,
I'm not engaging in this conversation with you, but there are lots of things in life that are boring.
I'm not engaging in this conversation with you. And I didn't use that as much when I was smaller because you just say, well, go like, I'm bored meant nothing.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things I just stopped saying because I'd never get a response.
Yeah.
My mom. And so then I just started doing things. But in college, I remember, and in high school, being bored in classes, and I'd always think of my grandmother saying, it's your job to make it interesting, which I, to this day, I use it in my school life, I use it in my work life, of if there's a project that you need to do, like, the more you invest in it, the more you get into it, the more you're going to get out, and the more fun it's probably going to be along the way.
Or that sort of conversely, like there are lots of things, like I think of with high school kids, and sometimes it's because it's turned into a discipline situation or whatever they're managing, but it's just so boring, fill in the blank. Well, there are going to be lots of times in your life that you just need to pretend to be interested, and this will not. And so that's a good skill to develop.
It's boring.
Right. And so it may not be of interest, but you still need to sit up and you need to be acting like you're interested, and like that's just a useful skill.
Yeah.
In life.
It is.
Because not everything is going to be fascinating all the time.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is, right? And there'll be elements of your job that are that way, right, that you don't particularly enjoy, but they need to be done anyway.
They do.
You have a responsibility to do them. And you have a responsibility to behave this particular way in a classroom, whether you like the teacher or not, right? And you don't have to like every teacher and everybody, right? But you do need to behave appropriately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's I guess I took it more in like
making
it interesting. Yeah. But like I have projects, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make this PowerPoint a little funnier because then I'll be more invested in it because now I'm just telling jokes. I'm not just doing PowerPoint. Right.
Yeah.
When you're pretty creative, do you feel like having enough time to be bored fosters that creativity and or the independence.
Right. And not even creativity in its sense of, I'm going to make this pizza or something. Right. But like creatively solving a problem or just weird stuff. I was really into like compost, still am, what's not a past tense, really into compost from a young age. And like, I just got into that. I think that boredom leads to like so many important things and like time to be outside. Like so many kids are inside now. Like time to be outside in the dirt, like down and dirty. Like I think it's just like one of the most important things for kids.
Right. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about delayed gratification. So Carolyn, can you explain the difference between short-term and long-term gratification?
Sure. Short-term gratification is where you're seeking some sort of immediate reward, or not necessarily seeking, but perhaps you're settling for that could happen in the future, or a reward that you could avail of yourself in the future. And I think that's a super important skill to develop. And there's some, right, as you guys know, right, research that actually delaying gratification is helpful in terms of prefrontal cortex development, analytical thinking, but it also develops patience, I think.
Yeah.
And
some like critical thinking too.
some
Like
critical
if I do this,
thinking.
then this.
Right. If I don't do this and I wait, right, then, and some ability to think abstractly, right, then potentially in the future, like that allowance example you were giving, then this might be something that I then
Could happen.
Could happen. So,
Yeah, and that takes time to build those delayed gratification. What age do you guys think parents of young children should start thinking about? You don't need to jump up and immediately meet all their needs right away. Like the little benchmark of, because it's not like you're going to deny little kids a long time, but you do want to say, hey, you can wait.
I mean, there was always the example of interrupting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I say this to our kids all the time of if someone comes up and my mom and I are speaking and a kid comes up, you say, you know, I'm speaking with an adult right now. You're going to need to wait a minute. And just even that piece. And like, you're not the most important thing right now, right? I mean, obviously, if you came up bleeding, it'd be a different situation. But yeah, I'd say that's even just the first.
right, where then you can learn to emotionally regulate, right?
Yeah.
Like, no, somebody's not going to tend to me right now because it's not an emergency. Like my mom would say, if the house is on fire or you're bleeding, then call me at work. Otherwise, don't call me. Like nothing else is really an emergency. It's going to be fine. And so I think helping kids realize that as well. Like this is manageable, but it's going to need to wait a minute because I'm doing something else right now. So I think that starts from a really young age, and not in an intentional sort of.
We're going to practice.
We're going to practice right now, but certainly the interrupting, it happens to be delayed gratification, but also a matter of politeness and how you interact with people, and
which is also modeling.
Yeah, we see it so much in kindergarten, right, Margaret?
Yeah, all the time.
as if all their needs are pressing. And I think that's important to teach them that that's not the case, because everything then seems like an emergency, right? So it helps them put things into perspective.
Also, like, decentering the kid. Sometimes, like you're not the only member of this community,
And they have
and that's even
to learn it.
right. Even within a family, like as third kid, I had 2 other siblings. Like my needs, my wants maybe might not be met like right now.
Why do you think I think it is hard when you're hungry, you want food right away or whatever. What makes waiting so difficult for not only children, but adults?
Hard.
I feel it is hard.
There's a book, Waiting is Not Easy.
Yep.
An elephant and piggy book.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. That was it.
I mean, I think because sometimes I think for people it's so hard to get out of the now, into what might happen, but I know I will get this cookie right now. I think it's just at an evolutionary level, just the concreteness of the immediate versus the abstract of the future.
Things are coming at us so quickly. So it's kind of like, I want the answer right away.
I think that's also to do right with the such fast-paced life we live right now, and so many we get answers instantly.
Yeah.
And kids want things
Now,
now,
yesterday.
and even just waiting for packages. I remember when I was little and I'd order something, which wasn't often, but it'd come 10 days.
Yes.
I'm waiting by the front door, and now you just get things right now. And there's something special about getting it later. There's of that payoff.
Yeah.
That you feel that.
I feel like
not feel immediately.
With what you're saying, like some of it now is sort of just conditioning, right? Because you're expected. I mean, I find myself the same thing. I need to order the same. Oh, great, it'll be here. But again, what do you mean 3 days?
Yeah.
That's outrageous.
No.
We're all conditioned.
yeah.
We're all conditioned.
We're all conditioned.
I think part of that's just harder now because of the immediacy of the whole.
So many
world.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how has it been, the two of you, the difference between when you were a student at the school and your mom was working there? What was that like being
I mean, I didn't know any differently, obviously, because I went to the same school for 13 years. She always worked there. That was always just how it was. I mean, people used to ask me this all the time. And how was it having your mom work there?
And you were a baby there because your siblings were there. So
I grew up there.
You grew up there, literally.
So for me, it's just a super safe place.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think that the community part was really important to me. You know, like knowing all the teachers and like I'd feel like the dean. So she was a dean for a long time. Like the deans she worked with were like my aunts and uncles. You know,
So you never got in trouble.
so I never know. I mean, I remember like one time. Oh, I didn't get in trouble. It was just that OSIS had come to me and kind of like, hey, what's going on in this class? But it also had this feeling of, since I was so close to the teachers, I mean, some of these people like threw my baby showers and stuff that I never wanted to like disappoint them, you know? So there was always like a little bit of pressure in classes with those teachers, you know,
Yes.
like I want to prove that I'm like, you know, I'm good stuff here. But,
And you are. You've proven.
so I think in elementary school was it felt very like safe, but I always that's just how it was. But, you know, like my siblings were there and I think it was more like my whole family was there and that everyone was really involved in the school. And it was harder in high school just because she was principal. That was a little bit trickier, or even in middle school, high school to navigate. But I think if you'd just been a teacher or something, I'd have probably a similar experience.
How was it for you, Carolyn, having all of your kids at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, same thing. I haven't known, like, that's what I've known. And I worked there, of course, before any of them were born. And then, as I said before, kind of made the decision, am I going to send them here or not? And again, I think what I said before, like the entitlement, so it wasn't that, it's the affluence, right? Of, like, how is that going to be managed, you know? And so...
Which was difficult.
Yeah. Right. So I think... Yeah, it's interesting because it did create, you know, my husband was involved at Campbell Hall before I was there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's how I know Campbell Hall. Yeah. So when he went to St. Francis de Sales and then Notre Dame, they used to come over and tech all the theater shows at Campbell Hall.
One of his best friends,
mothers, because Campbell Hall didn't have a theater department. So when I knew of Campbell Hall because he was on contract building sets for the theater department.
Interesting.
And so... Yeah, people were at our wedding from Campbell. I didn't even know because I wouldn't start working there until 2 weeks later.
So how long have you been working there?
37 years.
Oh, 37.
So when Tim went involved there for 40 something years, probably like, gosh.
Should be called the Gailey School.
So I think I never thought, it never seemed hard to me. Like, you know, he'd said, like, I didn't run into the situations like, oh, my kids got into trouble and I was either working at the school or the principal or something like that. But I think it was, as I realize now, as I've said to them, that they handled my job there more gracefully than I know, because I'm sure there were, you know, things that were said to them about whatever it was, decisions I had to make or things, you know, teachers might say,
you know,
to them.
Or like, why'd your mom do XYZ? Or like, do you know what happened with so-and-so? And you're always kind of
like, because there was always a strict, it was, I guess, difficult, but I don't think of it as that. Just but the reality was, it was like Campbell Hall all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's where I worked. That's where you went to school. So your friends were there. So when you came home, like they're doing their homework. You know, there's very little separation, but it was clear always. And it was just always this way. I never talked about stuff at school, at home, or with any of my kids.
So that was a clear...
Oh, that was a clear boundary, and they never asked me about it, and they just knew that's how it had to be.
We're not going to do that because that's...
Well, it's wrong, and it's wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's wrong, and it's, you need a break, too.
Right.
It was wrong.
I don't mean talking about stuff at school, but that you're conscious of how it would... of how something that I might do would look. Or I would think that it's...
Oh, yeah. And so... But then... What turned out happening is that since, you know, like a lot of, I think, people at school who work there will say like, oh, and you have some of your most valuable friendships as adults you meet there. And that was not the case with me because, and you guys have probably had this experience, that you're always working. Like even if you're at a social thing, you're working because you're working for the school, even if it's not a work event, right? Mm-hmm. And that became more challenging when I was principal because there would be things I didn't want to be exposed to that So I just always separated the two and didn't really socialize with anybody from Campbell as a parent, right? Because one, it was like, they're just,
line. Yeah.
well, it was just, you get tired of it, like, oh, I still talking about school. But also then
I agree. So now you're both working at the school.
Mhm.
And how's that being colleagues of sorts? Colleague,
yeah.
faculty together.
I mean,
It's to me, it feels that way, like maybe when we're at those, 3 of them a year, the K through 12,
The big meetings.
big meetings. I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? But still, we don't talk about school outside of work. Well, you'll come and tell me about like,
for me,
Yeah.
I think I debrief
You
a
debrief.
lot more
Yeah.
because sometimes I have a situation like you just have a situation like, yeah, so this parent came in and blah blah.
But you're in a different phase of your career.
I'm in a
Right.
lunch exactly.
So
She's not looking for advice
it's
from me, but like for
necessary.
me, I
You're processing.
not always looking for
Yeah.
advice, but I'm processing like, what
Right.
do you think is happening here? And then you'll often have
that's true.
often have like a gray perspective of
Yeah.
like, oh well, think about like you never know what that person's going through or like blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I think for me, I enjoy it as a colleague because I'm like, I'm trying to lean.
And she has a
What's-
great frame of reference.
I think I
Share.
probably debrief more than
You're
you.
right. Now to think of
But-
it. But it's not like a back and forth. Let's now
no,
talk
no.
about our days. But you'll say, no, this, or like this really cute thing happened.
or just
Like,
like
I feel like I
stories.
know all your kindergartners.
Yeah.
Like,
You'll be like, oh yeah, that one with the baby.
is that the one that lost his tooth?
Yeah.
Whatever. So,
Yeah, that's fun to like have. It's so nice to have someone like close who understands like exhausted or just all that sort of.
It must be because we go home and we can't, there's nobody that really gets it.
That's why it's so good to
Yeah.
have good colleagues
Right.
and
Yeah.
mentors.
Oh, totally.
yes.
But
And
like even my sister has come into our class like, a couple times and she's like, yeah, I realize I just have like no idea how chaotic your day or not how chaotic your day is, but she's like, wow, you were
Seems
really-
chaotic to her.
Right. I'm like,
Yeah.
you're really in the trenches. And I was like, what are you talking about? They're just like,
They're so
lining up
cute.
for lunch. But yeah, you do.
A new appreciation.
Yes, for sure.
Well, it's wonderful to have your mom as your mentor and as well
Yeah.
as your mom. But I know for Christina and me, we have learned so much from you. And that has been a gift. It goes both ways.
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
We've learned so much. It's always great to watch other teachers and you always learn something new. Thank you guys.
I'm officially obsessed, and you will be too. If you haven't tried Lem by Hello Nancy yet, what are you doing? Over 1 million women are using it, and the reviews are wild. One girl literally said, "Join the incredibly satisfied brigade." I didn't believe it until I tried it myself. The hype is 100% real. Don't let the cute design fool you. Go to hellonancy.com and see what the hype is about.
Should we go into our speed round?
Let's do it. So we want to end with a little speed round just for fun. So we'll start with you, Carolyn. First thing that comes to mind.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Coffee, 100%.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
A rule your kids definitely remember.
There were so many expectations. I guess there's not one single thing, just that there were high expectations and confidence that your kids could achieve them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But not a single, not a
But
single.
not pressure.
No, but not pressure.
Well, was there something?
Calm way.
Yeah, in a very calm way.
Was there something that they might have rolled their eyes at, not to you, that they did that you stand by? They were like,
I don't know, because I wrote when I went to sing that, like there really wasn't any eye rolling allowed.
No, I know, but that's what I said, not to you. You didn't
Yeah.
see the eye rolling, but you knew that they were kind of like, oh, man.
I can think of a time, like when my older daughter was, I think it was a senior in high school, and there was some, and then you're just like monitoring, no, you can't go to that after party or whatever. And I remember her saying, when is this going to end? And I said, well, when you go to college next year, I won't be in charge of you every day. End of conversation. That was for it. And she knew what the answer was. It was
Yeah.
just frustration.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I
Absolutely.
said, well, that'll be next year.
What is one chore everyone should know how to do?
I think, I have two, like they kind of go together.
Okay.
Cleaning, cooking. Yeah, I guess maintaining Maintaining a house. Maintaining a house. With all of what that requires.
Sounds like folding laundry that it was definitely mastered in your house.
Apparently not highly valued at 25 cents a load, though.
I didn't value in laundry.
There were some things that weren't valued.
But you
okay.
needed money, so I'm like, fine.
What's something you're still learning to be patient about?
I think things that people do in a particular way that I would have done differently. I think that's down to the systems.
That goes down to like your granddad's like, there's a right way to do things.
Exactly.
And then and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
But you're not going to say that out loud.
Yeah.
But it's what you're thinking.
Well, no, the problem is it kind of gets set up.
Oh, dear.
Like,
She's still
why
learning.
are you, don't you know that proper-
It sounds like your parents had some good phrases.
Mhm.
Can you, a phrase you said as a parent that you now hear?
or that my parents did?
Yeah.
Well, one that Margaret would always say, it'll become obvious when you would ask her a question that didn't need answering.
It'll all become.
It'll become obvious, But it's not worth me addressing that right now with you.
It'll all become obvious.
It will become obvious.
Obvious.
And then another one would be, which my mom would say, not my dad, of where's your protein?
What's
I
your
used to-
protein?
yeah,
And this was
protein.
before the protein movement.
Where's your
Because my parents were really into nutrition and like, where's your protein?
Where's your protein?
Like, don't eat just these empty snacks. It's just like,
Where's your protein?
That's not gonna fuel you. Like, that's why you walk out this door with a spoon of peanut butter. Like, do you need it? That's be another one. Do you need a spoon of peanut butter? Like, if you're having a meltdown, do you need a spoon of peanut butter?
There's something to be said about that.
Or like, don't tell me you're cold if you didn't bring a jacket. No, I don't want to hear it.
I love it.
You guys need to write a book of all these phrases.
You
They're good ones.
should.
They're good. They're good. All right, Margaret.
It's your turn.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, morning person or slow starter? I know the answer to this.
Starter. Not the morning bird yet. No, that'll come.
But when she gets going, she's good.
Yeah,
She's a slow
Once I
starter.
got going, but it's definitely a slow start.
What's your favorite part of the kindergarten day?
I'd say either choice time on Fridays or if we're doing it, gardening.
Love it. What's your least favorite mess to clean up?
Glitter.
Oh, I love glitter.
Oh, gosh. It gets everywhere. But you know what? Now we have a vacuum.
We do have a vacuum.
Yeah.
Good.
And guess who vacuums? The student.
Yes. I bet they
Yeah, it's a little mini vacuum.
I bet they love it. What's the phrase you say every day in the classroom?
Well, when I was in second grade, it was, or when I was teaching second grade, it was, it'll all become, and then the kids would say in unison, obvious. Which is usually they wanted to know directions prematurely. Now it's probably like, lock in.
Focus.
Like, yeah. Or, yeah, if you're not helping, you're hurting.
If you're not helping, you're hurting.
If you're helping, you're hurting. It's gotta be a faucet, not a drain.
So what's something that kids are surprisingly good at? What do you think?
I don't know if I'd say surprisingly, but like figuring things out.
Mm-hmm.
Like usually if you give them like, you can do it, then they can figure it out,
Yeah.
Say so.
Something kids thinks is so hard, but isn't.
I would say packing up, like closing the backpack. At the end of the day, maybe they don't have enough protein, but yeah, also because sometimes they have so much stuff to manage. And so that's like what I taught them at the beginning of the year. Like start with the biggest items first, the stuff that can't bend, and all that goes in first. Then you put the lunchbox in. Then you put but you have to it's one of those things you have to explicitly teach.
It's not obvious.
It's not
Obvious. And even if they've done it 25 times, they still need directions.
Or sometimes there's that one day, they've got the extra coat, they've got a project. They're like, what do I do with this?
What do I do?
Hold your folder to your heart, otherwise everything falls out.
Explicit teaching kindergarten.
And last question, one thing your mom was right about that you can admit it now.
Yeah, just one.
Say more.
No, I think she always used to say when I was little, like we did a lot of cooking or like baking, stuff like that. And like I said, we had a lot of friends on our block. And it seemed like she'd always make a bunch of cookies and then like give them all away. And then we had like a dozen left. And I was like, Mom, what's the deal? I want more cookies. And she'd always say, well, it's like in the spirit of generosity. If you put some cookies in a box and they're like, it looks measly, she says, well, you need to put more in, like in the spirit of generosity. So part of that is just like that you're part of a community and that like this would bring joy to someone else. Mm-hmm. And It's not like all the joy is just for you.
Mm.
And that's what tethers you to other people and builds a bond with other people.
Love that.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, girls. That was awesome.
Thank you.
So we always like to have like, what's our big little lesson?
Jenny,
What do you think? There are so many.
I know, there really are.
My big little lesson today, learning from Carolyn and Margaret. I love the idea of staying calm because I like to stay measured, but learning to help step back a little bit, see a bigger picture. Because sometimes as parents and teachers, we can get our blinders on and we lose sight of it. But understanding, like, let's look at the what ifs, look at the big picture, and just stay calm in always the moment, because this too shall pass.
Right.
Thank you both so much.
Yeah.
What about you, Christine?
I think this conversation really reminds me about the importance of modeling for your children, like intentional parenting and the thoughtfulness behind it in terms of raising resilient, independent children, because that's what you've done here. And it's really hard for us, like you said, Jenny, to stay regulated sometimes and being thoughtful about that. But just, we're always modeling. They're always watching. They're always listening. And that's so important.
Yeah, if you don't want your children on the screens all the time, you can't be on the
Can't
screen.
be on your screen all the time.
There you go.
I can guarantee you Carolyn was not on her screen.
Well, I told you guys I just thought about that because my niece who's only, 15 months, and I usually read on my Kindle. I just got like real books to read.
Yeah, around
I
her.
want her to see me reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to model it.
Yeah.
Do either of you have any big little lessons or thoughts about today's discussion you wanted to share?
Focusing on children being their own people.
And I
And then
think
you're helping them along the way, not having some preconceived idea of what you want them to be, or because each person is their own person.
That's right.
Yeah, I think you remind me a lot of like the concept of show, don't tell. You know, like any of these boundaries and stuff, it was all, it wasn't as if it was told to us, right? Like, it's not like, hey, community's really important, right?
Yeah.
But we did stuff and we were part of a community. And we always did things that showed that you were doing that, whether it's sharing your jam you've made down the street or anything, or just taking care of other people. That's my
Thank you.
So listeners, as you go into your week, we invite you to notice one moment where you might pause and think about how you're stepping in.
Where might giving a child or even yourself the space to figure something out, which could lead to growth.
You can find us on Instagram at Teach Big Little Lessons, and you can reach us anytime on our email, teachbiglittlelessons@gmail.com.
Yeah, and we'd really love to hear your stories, your reflections, your questions, your comments, and your big little lessons. Because we might not have all the answers, we have lots of experience. Until next time.
When was the last time you felt in control of your business finances? Expenses tracked, invoices sent, taxes ready. That's where Found comes in. Found brings your banking, bookkeeping, invoicing, and taxes together in one simple app. Manage expenses, invoice clients, send payments, and prep for tax time right where you bank. Join the hundreds of thousands who have already streamlined their finances with Found. Open a Found account for free at found.com. That's FOUND.com. Found is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services provided by Lead Bank, member FDIC.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.